Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Public Safety Innovation Series. Thanks for joining us. I'm Chris Arterberry of Envisage Technologies, your host for today's webinar. Before we kick it off, I've got a few things to cover with you. Today's presentation will run about 45 minutes, and then we'll have a few minutes for Q&A. But due to the nature of today's topic, we're only going to cover general questions that come in during the webinar. So for any specific questions that are unique to an individual situation, our speaker has graciously offered to connect with you offline outside of the webinar. So to ask questions, you can simply enter them into the chat box in the lower left corner of your screen, and you can do so at any time. Secondly, we're also recording today's webinar, so you'll be able to watch it again or share it with others, and we'll send you information about that in the near future. And then finally, a little bit about us. Envisage Technologies, the host of the webinar. Envisage is the leader in training and compliance technology for public safety professionals with over 1.3 million first responders using our technology. We help ensure that our public safety professionals are trained, equipped, and ready, and we're passionate about raising the bar on training. In short, we believe that readiness saves lives. We provide the Public Safety Innovation Series because we're committed to improving public safety through awareness and innovation, and we want to help get great ideas and best practices, those that can save lives, out there and adopted. Now, with that said, today's topic speaks to the very issue of saving lives. The world of public safety professionals can be rewarding, but also offers many challenges. Widely reported struggles with PTSD, depression, substance abuse, and other psychological problems within the community indicate that the challenges can be quite severe. Today, we're fortunate to have Amy Morgan with us to discuss these issues and what those in the public safety community can do to help themselves or others. Amy is the founder and executive training director of Academy Hour, a training provider offering courses to law enforcement and first response teams. She's a member of the Mental Health Committee for the International Public Safety Association and serves as a subject matter expert in the areas of leadership and mental health for the IPSA and the Justice Clearinghouse. She also serves as a curriculum director and instructor of mental health courses for the Council on Law Enforcement Education and Training in Oklahoma, and is the strategic training partner for the Oklahoma Association of Chiefs of Police. Amy also holds a master's degree in counseling. Amy, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Chris. I appreciate it. I am really glad to be here, really glad to be able to present to you today and to this group. So I'm going to go through some just basic slides and explain things. And like Chris said, we'll have some Q&A at the end if you want, but they have to be pretty general questions. I don't want to be giving mental health advice over a webinar for people to take a whole bunch of different ways. So I'm going to go ahead and start here. Sometimes it seems like the more you give, the less you're appreciated, and often the more you give, the less you take good care of yourself. Many of you are working in very challenging environments, and you spend most of your time caring for other people's needs in some way. Giving to others tends to take a toll on those who are doing the giving. When you're also battling other environmental stressors, like those in law enforcement do, more and more all the time, this takes an even greater toll on those whose careers are focused on helping and protecting others. Chris did a great introduction to me, so I'm going to skip my bio here. Don't need that. So we're going to cover today, we're going to do a quick self-assessment. You're going to need a pen and paper to write a couple things down and keep some scores as we go. I'm going to talk about types and aspects of your health. And I approach this as a holistic approach, so the big picture rather than individual aspects. So we'll talk about that. I'm going to talk a little bit about factors that weaken health, and I'm going to talk about challenges that are facing those in public safety. A little bit about anxiety and how it leads to stress and how that can lead to burnout. Going to be really helpful to talk about prevention and then treatment of those very things, and then thinking your way to health. So as I said, get a pen and paper, and we're going to take down just add up some numbers. Take a quick look at where you think you currently stand as far as your overall health and well-being. This is just a quick assessment. Answer these 10 questions to yourself on your piece of paper and keep track of your points so that you can add up your score when you're finished. You're going to answer each question with a rating between 1 and 5, 1 being toward the negative and 5 being on the positive side. And I want you to answer these questions based on how you see yourself, not on how someone else might answer for you. The first one is, I would rate my regular daily energy level as, and you're going to select a rating for yourself between 1, which would be very low daily energy level, to 5, which would be a very high daily energy level. Remember, you're ranking these based on how you feel, not someone else's viewpoint. The next one is, I feel that my overall sense of well-being is. Select a rating between 1 and 5. Third question, I feel that my resistance to illness and stress is. 1 through 5. Number 4, I feel that my current physical condition or health is. And rate yourself 1 to 5. Number 5, I feel that my level of self-motivation and follow-through is. And rate yourself 1 to 5. Number 6, I would rank my self-esteem as, and rank yourself 1 through 5. Number 7, I feel this way about my current social situation. And your social situation is your group of friendships, your support network, overall your relationships. Number 8, this is how I feel about my ability to handle stressful situations, pressure, or deadlines. And rate yourself 1 through 5. Number 9, when things don't go my way, this is how I would rate my current reactions and feelings. 1 being negative, 5 being positive. And last, I feel the current level of peace and contentedness in my life is ranked at. Give yourself a rating from 1 through 5. Now take just a minute to add up your points, and you're going to use your total to find your score in the table on your screen. I'll give you just a minute, add up your points. I'm going to go ahead and run through the scoring kind of slowly just so you can keep adding. If your score is between 10 and 19, you have the potential to be living with anxiety, stress, or even depression, and these can lead to possible physical illness. If your score is between 20 and 29, you are potentially prone to health issues related to life events that are causing anxiety or stress. If your score is between 30 and 39, you're most likely managing life fairly well. You have a moderate resistance to anxiety or stress as it relates to your health. If your score is between 40 and 49, you probably have very few health issues related to stress or anxiety, and you have a positive reaction to most things that happen in your life. Now, if you scored a 50, congratulations. You are more than likely someone who, no matter what, always looks for the silver lining and the bright side of events, and you are healthy and content with your life just the way it is. We're going to talk about 3 main factors today, but there are other aspects to being holistically healthy, and these other aspects include this list here. And I'm going to skip the first 3 because we're going to go into those in more detail. They're kind of the foundation of this training. So we'll go down to social health. Social health refers to having good relationships. This is basically on a general level, having socially supportive networks in your life. Spiritual health refers to someone's faith or their values, maybe just your beliefs and your principles and morals. Financial health is a sense of security. It's meaning you don't have much worry related to your finances. Environmental health refers to someone's surroundings. This could be your home, your physical surroundings. Occupational health refers to safety in your workplace. It's prevention of injuries or illness related to work. Cultural health refers to basically a general acceptance, either within your culture or based on your culture or your background. And intellectual health refers to being creative or able to handle mentally stimulating activities. It's your ability to take on new knowledge, new skills. It's someone's learning potential. And then relational health refers to your closer relationships, your marriage, your siblings, your parents, and your kids. So if you know that you have some problems in some of these areas, keep in mind that those things may be affecting your overall health and your overall strength and resilience. And I'll talk about why. So try just for a minute to imagine this scenario with me. Try to remember the last time you were really sick. So you maybe had the flu, you have fever, you're achy, you have chills, and you have a complete lack of energy. You're laying in bed or you're laying on your couch and you're covered in blankets because of the chills. Your back aches, your eyes hurt. You remember this time you were sick, your face feels hot. You need to get up and get a glass of water, but you are just too weak to move. So you muster as much energy as you possibly can, and you roll over and you close your eyes. You're so weak you can barely lift your head. But then, now I don't know about you, but I hate spiders. And if I am in my upright and healthy state, my fully alert with all my capabilities, I'm going to jump up as high as possible, and I'm going to grab whatever is handy, and I'm going to war against this spider. I'm going to use all my energy killing the spider until he is really, really, really for sure dead. But if I'm as sick as we're imagining in this scenario, I'm going to have so much less energy, and I'm going to care so much less than if I were at my best. And if I'm feeling that badly, I'm probably not going to ignore the spider completely, but I will probably very lazily grab whatever's closest to me and just heave it in the direction of the spider, hoping it will go away. Because feeling unhealthy makes us care less. It gives us less energy to care. It gives us less strength to respond to things. And it doesn't allow us to try as hard or to give as much effort as when we're at our best. So back to the safety issue, how safe are you going to be if you're in this weakened state? Can you keep yourself safe if all of your health is not at its best? Can you keep someone else safe? Do you want the person who's supposed to be keeping you safe to be completely healthy all over in every way, or to maybe have physical strength but be struggling with their mental or emotional health? The better your overall holistic health, the safer you are and the safer that those you are protecting will be. Imagine someone who is then under a lot of stress. They probably have a lot on their mind, and that's going to make them lack focus. Imagine someone who has been physically sick a lot, so physically they are weaker than they usually would be. Or imagine someone who is anxious or tense or irritable. Their thinking and their problem solving may not be as good as it normally would. Imagine someone who has dealt with a lot of negative things in his life lately, and each thing has worn him down just a little bit more until he's almost in a depressed state. Would you want any of those individuals being on your team in a situation where quick thinking and strength might mean the difference between life and death? In the mildest scenario, this might just be a team member at work who you are relying on for part of a project before you can do your part. But when someone is not healthy, safety can become an issue. Productivity is another. So as it says here, good health is strength. It is alertness. It's resilience. It means you're quick thinking. You have good problem-solving skills. It means you can manage your emotions. It means you're adaptable and flexible, and you have responsiveness. We need all of these things, particularly for those of you who are in careers that require them for your safety or the safety of others. You can also look for signs of health needs in others, so those you work with or those you depend on. And you may need to step in and try to get someone help if you know they are lacking important health aspects. Let's talk now about the things that may have led you into the score that you gave yourself earlier. We're going to approach overall health today, like I said, through a holistic approach. What that really means is considering the whole picture rather than just these pieces and parts separately. The theory throughout this workshop will follow the premise that your physical, mental, and emotional health are all connected to each other. In order for you to be completely healthy in one of these aspects, you really need to be healthy in all three. So if, for instance, your physical health is poor, let's say you have chronic pain or you have an ongoing illness, that can start to wear you down mentally and emotionally. Not being fully mentally well or emotionally well, like being full of worry or stress, can start to also affect you physically. So we're approaching these three aspects together under the belief that they are all connected and they all affect each other. For most of us, and particularly those in careers where fast response and being at our strongest is crucial, being unhealthy in any of these three areas also then weakens us overall, and it can lessen our ability to stay safe and possibly to keep others safe. So let's discuss each aspect individually. We'll start with emotional health. Emotional health, just to describe it, involves being in control of your actions, specifically the actions that are based on your feelings. So it's possible that you have strong emotions towards something, but being able to control your behavior and your actions from those feelings is a sign of emotional health. Emotional health is also being able to just handle life's regular challenges, including some of the tougher ones that come our way. Emotional health gives us the ability to build relationships and to maintain strong relationships. We have all seen the damage caused by someone in a relationship who could not control their emotions or their behavior. Emotional health helps you to quickly recover from setbacks and to be flexible and adaptable and to move forward. It also relates to being self-confident, being self-aware, and having the ability to find meaning in difficult situations. It allows someone to not hold grudges or just think and brood over bad situations. helps someone to avoid self-defeating behavior. It allows someone to manage their anger, to manage things like guilt and sadness and disappointment and hurt. When someone has poor emotional health, it can present itself through depression, anxiety, addiction, and poor anger management. The next aspect we're going to look at is mental health. So a person with strong mental health will be able mentally to cope with normal life stressors. They will have capabilities to make a contribution to society and their community. So you know that people with mental disorders or mental disabilities are not necessarily able to make their contribution to society. They're not able to function like they should. Someone with good mental health will be quick thinking, clear thinking, and be able to make decisions easily. Good mental health allows a person to be self-sufficient and perform their daily life tasks for themselves. Mental health allows someone to have great problem-solving abilities and adaptability. It allows them to be fast learning and to have discernment, which is important in a lot of our careers. Strong mental health will allow someone to think outside the box, to be mentally resourceful, to have a good memory, to have solid management of their thought processes, and to use good judgment. So poor mental health can result in a disability, like I said, making a person unable to function well in their daily life. Mental illness and mental disorders are the diagnosable result of poor mental health. The third aspect, one we most recognize most easily, is physical health. So someone with strong physical health will have longer periods of being well. They'll have good vitals. They'll be resistant to illness and disease. You'll recover more quickly when you do get sick. Strong physical health is indicated by things like a healthy heart, healthy lungs, healthy digestive system, as well as just plain physical strength. Someone who's physically healthy will more likely have better sleep patterns also. Factors of physical health include things, as we know already, a healthy diet and exercise. Physical health also means being free from addictions like drugs, alcohol, and tobacco. So, think back to your score before, but then think of these three areas. How would you rate your own health in each of these three areas? And then look in the middle of this diagram. The word safety is there because the combination of all three of these areas of health will be a determining factor toward your safety and the safety of those around you. We're going to talk a little bit more about that in a bit. So we're going to talk here about factors that we talked about what the areas of health are. We're going to talk about the factors that weaken these three areas of health. So emotional health we'll start with. It says here what we talked about, what it is. It can be weakened by if you're having struggling relationships, if you have too many life challenges at once, or you're having really difficult life challenges. If you have a lot of setbacks and you don't have recovery time between having the setbacks, they just keep happening one after another. And then there's outside elements, anything that could be a source of depression or anxiety or anger. And then mental health. This can be weakened by things like genetics or heredity, a brain injury or brain damage or infections, substance abuse, toxins and poor nutrition, trauma or neglect or significant loss, and then significant change in your life, or some sort of mostly intense struggle. And then physical health, again, we know these better than the other two, but this can be weakened by things like stress and anxiety and depression, illness or disease, physical abuse, poor nutrition, a lack of exercise, lack of sleep, which I'll talk about in a minute, and then things like alcohol, smoking, or other drugs. These are the things that can weaken your physical health. One of the things that can also weaken someone's ability to respond, like I said, is a lack of sleep. And it's huge. Once you start researching what sleep deprivation can do to you, it makes you really just want to go to bed. If you'll picture the last time you were on a road trip or just driving somewhere while you were extremely tired, you remember you can easily see how that causes your abilities and your reactions specifically to slow considerably. You just aren't on full alert. You're not aware of all of your surroundings, and you aren't nearly as prepared to react when you need to. This works the same as poor holistic health. Your body is tired or weak, your mental capacities are lessened, and your emotional resilience is not as strong as usual. So all of this can result in things like decreased performance and alertness, in memory and cognitive impairment. Cognitive, your thinking, your ability to think. It can stress relationships. It can just lead to a general poor quality of life. It can cause occupational injury. It can cause automobile injury. Sleep deprivation can actually lead to medical illnesses like high blood pressure, heart attack, heart failure, stroke, and obesity. It can also cause mental illnesses such as depression and other mood disorders. It seems so simple to solve all of these potential problems. I mean, you just get some sleep, right? But we all know that's easier said than done. But it is a really important element of good health. Our goal here is to be resilient, to be strong, and to be able to respond quickly when needed and to take action. The next thing we're going to talk about that may affect your health is if you've experienced trauma. And I address this specifically because of emergency responders and the things that they see on a regular basis. Something that is considered to be trauma to one person may not seem like trauma to another or vice versa. So you can't really judge what someone else's experience is and decide for them whether it's trauma or not. But in general, this description, an event or an incident that could cause trauma to a person could include being part of an actual incident where you feared for your life or safety. If you watched an incident like this or heard about one. If someone you're close to was involved in this type of incident. If this incident involved behavior that was shocking or unexpected. If the incident involved behavior that completely went against social expectations, and this could be things like murder or rape, torture, and any situation that is faced by someone that causes, this is really long, but basically if it causes a distressing, dramatic, or profound change or disruption in their ability to function, either physically, psychologically, or both. That means it interrupts your ability to function. Now this could also include bullying, name-calling, abuse, badgering, or harassing. Law enforcement personnel and emergency responders are facing this potential for trauma exposure every day in this way, as you're now going out into the field and being criticized so frequently. And every type of emergency response personnel are open to trauma every day on an ongoing basis just by seeing very bad incidents and disturbing scenes regularly. With trauma, there are short-term reactions to crisis or trauma, and these could include insomnia, anxiousness, or agitation. So you want to look for those things. And then there are longer-term effects of trauma, which also include post-traumatic stress disorder. This could include things like overwhelming fear, a sense of loss of personal control over your environment, and a memory or stimuli of some sort may trigger the same emotional reaction felt during the actual and original incident. Even if it's not diagnosable PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, a traumatic event may cause any one of these things or a combination, and you can see this long list here, a combination of these things. Obviously, the more of these reactions a person has, the more severe their trauma. So if you have any of these or some of them or a lot of them, seeking help through a professional counselor is the best first step for preventing these reactions or managing them once they occur. Note, they may not even occur immediately after an incident. They may actually show up sometime later. So if you start showing any of these reactions yourself, or if you start seeing them in someone else, it's time to get help from a professional. Don't let these things go because they don't just go away on their own, and they could instead get potentially worse. So if we return to our original diagram and think again about how important each aspect is to the overall picture, and now you know how each of these areas may be affected, you can more easily focus on improving each of the areas. So quick suggestions for improvements. Improve mental health by participating in activities where you're learning, where you're testing your knowledge and your skills, and you're looking to actually improve your mental abilities. Emotional health you can improve by going to counseling, through friendships and relationships that actually provide you support, by alleviating whatever anxiety and stress you can in your life and working on balancing your emotions. And then physical health, again, eating right, exercising, drinking water, sleeping, making sure your physical health is in the strongest state possible. So I want you to look at this picture and just imagine for a second that you are holding your arms out in front of you like this guy, and someone places one book on your arms, and you have to hold that book. Okay, that's probably not very heavy. You could probably hold it for quite a while. You could carry it around with no problem. But imagine this book is symbolic of one of the stressors that people have in their lives. So maybe it's a stressful situation at work. If that's the only real stressor this person has, they can carry that around for quite a while. Yeah, it's inconvenient. Maybe it's not fun to carry the book, but it's manageable. It doesn't really have that bad of an effect on the person, just this one stressor, this one book. But imagine now a second book placed on top of the first book, so also another stressor. Maybe one of their kids is getting into some sort of trouble. So now this person is carrying two stressors. Still manageable, but it's not as easy. Well, throw another book on there, maybe a big heavy book. Maybe this is financial stress. Maybe they aren't able to pay their bills. So this person is carrying three books, three stressors. And their arms may start getting tired from carrying these. They could probably carry them for an hour, no problem. It's heavy, it's uncomfortable, but imagine carrying those around for longer. Like sometimes people carry stressful situations with them for a long time. The longer this person has to carry these stressors, these books, the heavier they begin to feel. So add a couple more books to this stack. Look at the guy in this photo carrying these books. This is a lot of stress. If it was short term, just for a bit, he could hold them, even though it wouldn't be easy. But imagine how he starts feeling the longer he has to carry these stressors around. After a while, his arms would start hurting, right? He would begin feeling weak in his arms, and his back probably will start to hurt. So what do you think this guy is thinking about at that point? If someone offers him solutions, do you think he's listening to them? All he's thinking about right now is what's hurting him. That's all he can focus on. He's not thinking about anything else going on around him. This is what happens when we get too much stress or too many factors weighing on us in stressful situations. We start to become unable to focus on other things, barely able to even manage what we're holding. I teach suicide prevention and I do suicide interventions. It's one of my areas of focus. The point that this guy is at right now, holding all of these heavy stressors and having carried them around by himself for quite some time, is how it feels when someone gets to the point where they're thinking of suicide. Now, even if this isn't the thought someone is having, they are probably having a very difficult time getting through each day and trying to manage anything else that may be coming their way. The longer that they carry these, and remember most people carry these things alone. They don't share all their problems with everyone. The more weary, weak, tired, and less able to function this person becomes. Most people at this point just want to drop all the books. But if you can get help, remove the books one by one, ease the load, remove the stressors, you can then get to a point where carrying a little bit is manageable. Obviously, carrying none is ideal, but that's not real life most of the time. Wouldn't it be easier to not load all those books on there in the first place? So if someone hands you a book, you quickly do what you need to do with it and you set it aside. When you see that you have a couple books building up and another one coming, be self-aware and know that you need to manage this quickly and get back to a lighter load. And obviously this is just symbolic, it's books, but hopefully shows you visually how building stress and carrying it for a long time can really have a negative effect on your overall health. These are some things that are experienced by first responders and law enforcement today. Just a quick list. So trauma. You have firsthand trauma, which means you see it firsthand. You're right there. And vicarious trauma, which is you hear about it or you're there after the event. Potential for terrorist incidents. There's body-worn camera scrutiny. Civil unrest in general. There's a public push toward criminal prosecution of officers. And then everyone knows everything you see on social media, public bullying and criticism. The public aspect of this bullying and this criticism has a very severe negative effect. Life-threatening work on a regular basis, every day. You don't know if your life's going to be threatened or not. And then you may experience a lack of support, and this may be from people at work, it may be from your superiors, it may be at home. People who just don't understand what you go through or what you put yourself through, so you feel like you have a lack of support or you actually have a lack of support. Those are challenges for law enforcement that can add stress. Those are more books piled on your pile of stress. So let's talk a bit about anxiety, stress, and burnout and the differences between the three, and then we're going to talk about how they affect you as well. Many of us just on a regular basis say we're stressed. We say this all the time, I'm so stressed. This is just a general term that describes our situation well enough to help people understand that we're going through something. But there's a difference between stress and anxiety as well as stress and burnout. And knowing what the signs are will help you know just how quickly that you need to make some changes or need to seek help. Anxiety and stress can both have a negative effect on our health. And if experienced for prolonged periods of time, can lead to burnout. Burnout is a really very difficult state of psychological health to be in, and it's very difficult to reverse. So you just want to make sure you don't get there. The best course of action then is to be preventative, not let yourself get into the state of burnout or pre-burnout. We're going to talk about each of the three of these. So we'll start with anxiety. There are different types and levels of anxiety. The first is mild and temporary. So this would be if you're having a problem at work or if you're about to take a test. If you're having to make a tough decision, that's anxiety. It might be something like having a car problem, or if your child is throwing a temper tantrum. It may be an argument or some type of conflict that can cause anxiety. This type of anxiety is designed to help your body react to a challenging situation. So fight or flight, basically. Your blood pressure goes up, your heart rate quickens, your muscles tense. This is all in preparation to react to a challenge or even possibly a threat. Mild and temporary anxiety like this, though, it happens briefly and then it subsides and it goes away after the event ends. The next type of anxiety is continuous anxiety. Now, this could be an anxiety disorder where the anxiety just doesn't go away or it gets worse over time. This type of anxiety causes feelings that actually interfere with a person's ability to go through regular daily activities. So it could be interfering with your job performance, your school, your work, your relationships. There are different types of diagnosable anxiety disorders, and these include generalized, panic, and social. So we'll start with generalized. Generalized anxiety is described as basically excessive anxiety or worry for months. Symptoms include things like restlessness or a feeling of just being wound up and on edge, easily fatigued, difficulty concentrating. Your mind goes blank a lot. Could just make you irritable. You have muscle tension. You have difficulty controlling your worry, sleep problems. And remember, this goes on for multiple months continuously. Most things, in order to be diagnosable by a psychologist or a counselor, have to be not only the symptoms, but they have to go on for some period of time that's defined. The next type of anxiety disorder is panic disorder. This is defined by someone who has recurrent panic attacks. So these are sudden periods of intense fear that may include heart palpitations, pounding heart, accelerated heart rate, may start you sweating, trembling or shaking. You'll have a sensation of the shortness of breath, like you can't breathe, you're smothering, you may feel like you're choking. It may just be a feeling of impending doom. Symptoms of this disorder include sudden and repeated attacks of intense fear, feelings of being out of control during a panic attack, intense worries about when the next one will happen, and fear or avoidance of places where you've had panic attacks in the past. And then there is social anxiety disorder. This is the last one. It's also called social phobia. And this is a marked fear of social or performance situations, and when someone expects they might feel embarrassed, they feel judged, they're afraid of being rejected, they're fearful of offending others. So symptoms of this include feeling highly anxious about being with other people and having a hard time talking to them, feeling very self-conscious in front of other people and worried about feeling humiliated, embarrassed, rejected, again, fearful of offending others, being very afraid that other people will judge them, worrying for days or weeks before an event where other people will be, staying away from places where there are other people. This is way more than just being an introvert. This is an ongoing disorder. So treatment for anxiety disorders could include therapy, specifically cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT. And this is basically changing your behavior through the process of first changing your cognition or your thinking. And this could be combined with either anti-anxiety medication or antidepressants. Exposure therapy is also sometimes used, and I'm going to go over that a little bit more later, but this is when a person who has a fear is gradually exposed to whatever it is they're afraid of or anxious about, and they learn gradually with little bits of exposure, increased a little bit at a time, to manage their anxiety about the fear. So eventually they're able to manage their fears in the presence of whatever it is that caused that anxiety. It's important to stay self-aware and know when your health is showing signs of ongoing anxiety versus that short-term situational anxiety. And if you see yourself showing signs of long-term anxiety, be sure and seek help. There are a lot of ways to calm situational anxiety. So situational being the anxiety that is caused by the situation, whether it's test-taking or problem-solving or conflict. If you feel your heart racing and your breathing quickening and you start shaking, it's also called nervousness sometimes, you can actually purposely calm your anxiety in several ways. So what it's done is it's ramped up all these things in your body. You need to purposely reverse all of those and undo them. The first and the very best thing that works for most people is to try to reverse all of those physical effects by slowing your breathing. So if you take a long, slow breath in and hold it for a few seconds and then slowly release it, the slowing your breathing actually calms all of the other physiological effects as well. You can stretch. So stretch your arms as high as possible and hold that position and then relax. Reach your arms out to the side as far as possible and hold that position and then relax. And just keep doing that, and that will relax you. And this one doesn't work for me, but it works for a lot of people. Think calming thoughts. So if you imagine yourself in a really peaceful place, like your happy place, somewhere you enjoy, or just in a situation that brings you peace or happiness, for a lot of people that actually calms them physiologically. And then the last one is just do some quick exercise, not like a whole round of workout. But with anxiety, your body is basically physically prepared to expend some serious energy. Remember, this is like to fight off a threat. So if you do some jumping jacks or sit-ups really quickly, you're using up that energy that's built up really suddenly, and it's helping your body then to relax on its own. If you can stay aware of when your body is experiencing anxiety and learn to calm yourself using some of these methods, you can actually help yourself avoid the ongoing and long-term anxiety that negatively affects your health. You have to recognize your body's reactions and calm them and then manage them. So as you see, I keep saying be self-aware, know what happens to you when in a moment of anxiety or in a moment of stress, and then you'll know what works to calm yourself as well. Like I said, anxiety is meant to handle a threat, something we see as a threat, and it's not bad for you. Your body's built for this. It's temporary. It helps you get ready for handling whatever you're facing in that moment, but then it subsides after the incident and your body just returns to normal. Stress is when your body goes into anxiety mode and then just stays in that elevated state for an extended period of time. So imagine just how many more times per minute your heart beats during an episode of anxiety. And then imagine how many times your heart beats. So there's 1,440 minutes in one day. That's a whole lot more heartbeats than your normal. Multiply that times just a week. So in the 10,000 minutes throughout the week, how many more heartbeats is your heart having to produce? Anxiety can just really be bad for your health, and extended anxiety or stress is hard on you physically. The next area to cover is stress. So let's go back to the definition I showed you just a bit earlier. Feeling that the demands exceed the personal and social resources the individual is able to mobilize. This is one of my favorite definitions of stress. Basically, it means the problem feels bigger than the possible solutions. Stress comes from demanding situations. Anxiety, which we just learned about, is when your senses are all on high alert to prepare for a threat or to react. And stress is when you remain in that state for an extended period of time, which can be bad for your health. Rather than the temporary anxiety subsiding or going away, you just remain in a physically tense state for far too long. So picture yourself being stressed about your job or about a financial situation. Your body gets tense and it shows all the signs of anxiety, but it's not a short-term situation. It just keeps going day after day. So your body stays in that tense, alert state. You aren't calming yourself between moments of anxiety, and that puts pressure on your body for extended periods of time, and that can cause potential health issues. Different situations can cause different types of stress. The main thing to consider is how high the level of stress, so how high, for how long the stress continues without a break or a reprieve. Obviously, the higher the level of stress, or the longer it goes on, or both combined, the worse it's going to be for your health. 4 types of stress are survival, internal, environmental, and fatigue. Survival is when you're trying to survive a dangerous situation. So this could be military incidents, work in a dangerous job, law enforcement, or even being in an abusive relationship. Then there's internal stress. This is where you have continuous worry or fretting or pressure that makes you feel tense. Then there's environmental stress. This could be long-term exposure to noise, to crowding, to difficult temperatures, or even outside pressure from others. And then there's fatigue stress. This is just being overworked. It's generally fatigued for a long time, going without good sleep for a long time, no rest or breaks, and no balance from your usual stress. So we can all survive stressful situations for a short period of time, but when you're in situations that cause stress, particularly high levels of stress, for a long period of time, that can lead to burnout. The way to prevent stress, I said again, is to be self-aware. If you find that you're carrying high stress levels for a long period of time, try to find ways to bring those levels back down. If you can, possibly delegate. Try to prioritize and eliminate some of your stressors. Ask for help. Look for ways to just pull bits of stress off your schedule and your life if possible. So let's talk about burnout. Signs of burnout are exhaustion, lack of enthusiasm and motivation, feelings of ineffectiveness, frustration, and cynicism. So there are certain occupations that actually find themselves suffering from burnout more than others do, and some of these include police officers, social workers, nurses, teachers, physicians. Firefighters are another one. They're not on that list. Generally, positions in the human services field have higher burnout because of the high-stress work environment and the emotional demands of the job. Because like I said at the very beginning, taking care of other people is an exhausting task. It actually depletes us. Some more signs of burnout. If you feel these things, this always, when I read this, it makes me feel like I'm saying, and if this, here's your sign. But if you feel that, every day at work is a bad day. If you feel exhausted much of the time, if you feel no joy or interest in your work, or you even feel depressed by it, if you feel overwhelmed by your responsibilities, and if you find yourself engaging in escapist behaviors, and this is things like excessive drinking, drugs, could be gambling, that sort of thing, have less patience with others than you normally would, if you feel hopeless about life or work, and if you experience physical pains like chest pain, sleeplessness, heart palpitations, or shortness of breath. Once stress reaches the point of burnout, like I said, it is very difficult to recover from. It is possible, though, but it's just not a quick process. It's way better to not get to the point of burnout. So as we've learned, anxiety is temporary. It can actually motivate us to accomplish something. Stress is unhealthy, but it can be managed. Breaks should be taken frequently, and you should try very hard to create a balance in your life between stressors and things you enjoy, things that relax you. Some ways to work on recovering from burnout once you get there are, first, discover the cause. Why did you get to burnout? What caused you? What brought you there? If possible, delegate or just eliminate as many responsibilities as you can. Some of this seems impossible. When you get to the point of burnout, you're not going to do those things anyway because you're in burnout. So it's best to just find someone else to do them or decide that some things just don't need to be done. Get enough sleep. Eat healthy foods. Drink plenty of water. Get a little bit of exercise if you don't do anything now, or just move more than you do now. And take a vacation or a break from stressors, but this is a temporary fix. It does not actually by itself solve burnout. It just might be part of your whole burnout, trying to fix your burnout. Take a vacation. Because typically if we take a vacation, that's great. We have a great time while we're on vacation, but we return to our regular life. We return to who we were before and our situation as it was before and everything that caused us to get burnout in the first place. So the vacation is really just a break from it. And then reassess your goals, identify your values and your priorities. And this is what I said, so that you can actually eliminate the things that aren't absolutely necessary, because you're not going to have it in you to do those things. The best solution is to try to eliminate all unnecessary stress. Back off from those things that aren't absolutely necessary, and this is the hard part, ask for help, try to rest, and work very hard on finding a balance. If you're feeling like everything is overwhelming, or if you see someone else who seems to be feeling this way, there are several resources for getting help. Like I said, one of my areas is suicide prevention and suicide intervention, and I teach workshops on what to do when someone's feeling suicidal. But if nothing else, remember that these resources are available to anyone, particularly this first phone number. And I'd love it if you guys would put this phone number, write it down, put it in your phone so that you always have it with you, whether for you or for someone else. This number is a National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, but you don't have to be suicidal to call it. If you just want to talk to someone, this number has people trained to listen whenever to whatever you have to say. But also they're there to help you find other resources and help for any situation. So they have databases available to them where they can find you resources and help outside of them. So you can call them as many times as you want to. You can talk for as long as you want to. It's anonymous. You don't have to tell them. You can make up a name and tell them if you want to. So it's just a great place if you want to talk to someone who's non-judgmental, who maybe doesn't know you on a regular basis, on a daily basis. It's a great place to call just to talk to someone. You can also call 911, obviously. Everyone knows how that works, or go to the emergency room, and you'll have an assessment done there. If you're looking for just help, you can call a physician, talk to family members and friends, but I like to caveat this by saying supportive and encouraging family members and friends. Don't talk to the people that are going to tear you down further. You can also talk to clergy, and by all means make an appointment with a counselor. Again, this is a great non-judgmental place to go to talk through things with someone. So where would you say you rank on the anxiety, stress, burnout path? Try to put yourself on there and see where you are. If you can be continuously aware of where you may be standing on this path, you can help yourself from moving into the more severe areas. Or if you're in the severe area, you know that it's time to do something about it. Prevention, of course, is always the best thing. So if you can prevent an illness or even prevent anxiety, stress, or burnout, then you don't have to worry about the effects these things can have on your health. But if you can't completely prevent them, the best thing you can do is to just stay constantly aware of where you are on that path. So just temporary anxiety or an ongoing anxiety, some sort of anxiety related to a particular issue. If there's stress that keeps going, what is it related to? Is it your job, your relationship, your finances? If you can identify the causes of your stress, then you can work harder to eliminate those things that are causing the most stress. Reprioritize and then try once again to go back to finding a balance and interjecting things that bring you calm and peace and a feeling of being content. All right, so I'm going to get a little nerdy. I'm going to talk about your brain. And I said think your way to being healthy. This is a really extremely simplified version, but it's still a little complicated, so stick with me. I'm going to talk about neuroscience for a minute, and I love this, but not everybody does. The brain uses chemicals that act as messengers to communicate with other parts of itself and with your nervous system. They're called neurotransmitters, and they're released and they're received by neurons, which are basically the brain's nerve cells. Neurons are constantly communicating with each other by way of exchanging neurotransmitters. This communication system is essential to all of your brain's functions. So there's a tiny space called a synapse that connects your neurons to each other. In a simple scenario, one neuron, which is the sender, sends a neurotransmitter message across this synapse, and the next neuron receives the message by way of this receptor. Any problem that interrupts the functioning of this chain of chemical events can negatively impact the brain and your nervous system. Depression has been linked to problems or imbalances in the brain with regard to the neurotransmitters serotonin, norepinephrine, and dopamine. The neurotransmitter serotonin is involved in regulating many important physiological functions, so including your sleep, aggression, eating, sexual behavior, and mood. Medications help with depression, then they work with the serotonin levels in the brain. So a couple things to consider here, though. If someone is suffering with depression, telling them to snap out of it isn't going to help. It's not a decision someone makes to be depressed. Chemicals in your brain are actually different when you're depressed. Medication can help, and it can solve a great deal of the chemical problem. So people who refuse medication for depression because of stigma or some other reason are really turning away something that could easily help them, no different than if you take Pepto-Bismol for a stomach problem. A second thing to consider is this, which I find extremely cool. Neurotransmitters and neurons can actually be trained. So if you continuously think of negative things and sad things, like if you have a lot of negative stressors in your life and you're focusing on those in a negative way, your neurotransmitters learn from this and they stop connecting like they're supposed to. So that can lead to depression, that chemical situation in your brain. But the opposite, which I find really cool, is also true. So if you continuously focus on positive, happy, you can actually gradually train your brain and your neurotransmitters to connect across that synapses properly. Obviously, this isn't an overnight thing. It's training them, like you train your muscles. You train them to reconnect through the kinds of thinking that is associated with their proper connection. It can be done. Remember that sometimes that someone in a depressed state, though, may completely lack the ability to get themselves thinking positively. So this generally requires medication or outside help. But the bottom line, in a very simplified form, is that the more you think positive, the more your brain trains itself to think positively. The more you think negatively, the more your brain gets trained to think negatively. Also, mild exercise like walking helps to stimulate the production of these important chemicals, norepinephrine, serotonin, and dopamine. And it is believed by some that mild exercise is just as effective as taking an antidepressant on stimulating that effect. Exercise also is believed to counter the effects of stress on your body and has a calming effect after a stressful experience. That was a lot of neuroscience. Other ways to prevent or treat stress include, and I mentioned this earlier, CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. Entering into therapy is seen a lot as a sign of weakness, especially in law enforcement or strong protective types of careers. They're afraid it will make others believe they aren't fit for their jobs, and in some cases they're told this. But actually the opposite is true. If someone goes to therapy and receives help with anxiety or stress, they're actually going to be much better in their holistic health. They'll be stronger, they'll be more resilient, and they will then be in a position to be stronger and better in their job. So I would send everyone to counseling if it were up to me. There's also meditation. This is a purposeful way to relax your mind and your body. And as yoga, this does much the same as meditation. And then there's attention modification, medication. Medication can help treat anxiety and depression, like I mentioned earlier, and sleep. Sleep loss activates areas of the brain that are also activated during anxiety. Living a healthy lifestyle. So this is sometimes ignored, but the more we pay attention to living a healthy lifestyle, you start thinking about eating right, you start thinking about exercise, you purposely drinking water, that means the less likely you are to participate in activities that are bad for your health, because your focus is on health, good health, positive health. That is all I have. I want to thank everybody for joining me today, and Chris as well. Thank you for letting me be your presenter in this workshop. I hope I provided some helpful information and started you thinking about how you can apply holistic health goals to your own life.
Amy, thank you so much. That was a lot of great information. Really appreciate you sharing your expertise with us today.
Absolutely.
We'd like to go ahead and answer a few questions that we received from the audience at this point. So as a reminder, if you still have questions, you can type them into the chat box. And we'll go ahead and start off with one here. It says, Amy, you talked about someone carrying the load of books or the load of stressful things, but how can we tell when someone else may be going through this stack of things and need help if they keep telling us that they're fine?
So the easy answer to that is people most of the time say that they are fine. So if someone looks stressed, you might say to them, are you okay? A lot of people are like, yeah, and you probably do this yourself. Yeah, I'm fine. You don't want to tell somebody, well, I'm carrying this book and that book, and I have, my wife and I are having financial problems, and my kids are acting up in school, and all of these things. You don't want to have to say those things to people, so it's easier to say fine. But if you can see someone you know that are experiencing the signs we talked about of anxiety, maybe they're irritable, maybe they're sick a lot, maybe they seem overly tired, they probably are going through some things. So if you could just get them talking, they'll probably start revealing little bits and pieces of things, and people tend to tell us the easiest things first. So it's really important to keep listening to someone. So you may say, hey, what's going on with you? What's bothering you? It seems you seem stressed. Are you stressed about something? They're not going to tell you the worst of the worst. They're going to tell you the smallest and the mildest first. And based on how you handle that, they may trust you enough to open up to share the next thing with you. And if you keep listening and just saying, oh my gosh, that does sound stressful, or I'm sorry you're going through that, what else is bothering you? And you just keep saying, what else? You don't have to have the answers for them. As a matter of fact, it's probably better not to try to give them advice and answers. Just keep asking, what else is going on with you? So it's just really watching for signs in people, just like I showed signs in your self-awareness. Just watch for that fatigue and the irritability and the frequent illness and that sort of thing.
Great, thank you. Next one here says, you showed us how anxiety builds into stress and how to reduce that anxiety that we have during a stressful moment. But how can we reduce the long-term anxiety that sticks around and turns into stress and burnout?
I would, again, just try very frequent calming techniques. Make sure that you are self-aware. Make sure you're not letting yourself get into the stress phase or into the burnout phase. But most importantly, I would just try to really create a balance. So if you have a lot of stressful things going on, try to also make sure that your life includes a lot of happy things, things that you enjoy, whether it's hobbies or friends and family, or just getting away from it all. Take a weekend and don't think about whatever the stressful event is. Just really try to get that balance so that the stressful things, those heavy weights that you're carrying around, are balanced out by positive things. Okay.
The next question. Do you have any other resources you could tell us about that people could use aside from the National Prevention Suicide Lifeline, specifically any hotlines or resources for those in public safety like law enforcement, firefighters, EMS, et cetera?
Yeah, so law enforcement specifically officers in law enforcement have a really great fear of calling or going to see a counselor because they are afraid it will make them seen as not fit for duty, and they'll be put on a desk job. So there are several now, and I should have put these on the list, but there's one called Safe Call Now, and it's basically a very anonymous helpline where they can give you referrals to counselors who basically do everything off the record. Safe Call Now, they have a website, and it'll have the phone number. I don't have the phone number with me, but safecallnow.org, I think, maybe .com, sorry. Another one is copline.org. There's Badge of Life. I think there's a National Police Suicide Foundation, PSF.org. Those are the ones that are coming to mind right now. But the Safe Call Now is the one that's kind of like the Suicide Prevention Lifeline, but it's made specifically for law enforcement, and it's actually run by law enforcement officers, former law enforcement officers.
That's good to know. Next question here. How do you take care of yourself in a field where getting help can be seen as a sign of weakness? That kind of speaks to what you were just mentioning.
Yeah, it is. They have to be very careful about it, and it's sad. It's basically one of my points, my mission is to educate, specifically like those supervisors of people, chiefs and that sort of thing, to say your officers and your responders are going to be stronger if you let them go get help. And if you say, look, you saw something really disturbing, you need to get some help for that, or tomorrow you're not going to be at your best, and we want you at your best, so let's get you all the help you need. They are very afraid of it because they're in the past and currently someone says, hey, I'm having an issue with what we saw yesterday or what we went through yesterday or this critical incident or whatever it was. I'm not handling it well. I think I need to go see a counselor. They're going to be like, okay, well, give me your gun because I don't think you're fit to be out on the street right now. You seem unstable if you think you need help. And that's the totally wrong way to look at it. So that's why there are these anonymous hotlines and so forth. And again, talk to peers, talk to people that you know you can trust that aren't going to judge you for and call you unfit or unstable. Because my goal, I have this video that I made that basically says, if you are being asked to not have reactions to disturbing events, that's the definition of a psychopath. And so your chief or whoever is asking you to act like a psychopath instead of a caring, feeling human being. And you want officers and responders to be caring, feeling human beings, not become psychopaths who are unemotionally responding to things without feeling things. So it's just a matter of changing the culture, which is, a goal, but right now it's just get whatever help you can, talk to whoever you can trust, and don't ignore it. My thing, don't compartmentalize, don't try to ignore the things that you've seen. Get help wherever you can, or talk to whoever you can in the best way that you can. And that's why I have an online training company, because if you can't go to counseling for PTSD, at least you can take a class. So get, whether it's my training or whatever, but get education. Educate yourself about the signs of PTSD, and educate yourself about anxiety and stress and that sort of thing. Because the more you learn, the better you can handle things.
Great. Yeah, and hopefully that culture can change over time.
Yeah.
I think we've got time for one more question here, Amy. And this one's asking for any best practice recommendations on teaching resilience to recruits without turning them off to it.
Yeah, I think that's a lot about thinking that one through here while I'm answering it, but that's a lot about honesty. You do want to say you're going to see some difficult things, but here's what you can do, which I think is what's been missing. They teach officers and responders how to respond, but they don't at all teach how it might affect them. So I think with recruits, you can just say, this is going to be difficult. You're going to see some horrible things, but we're going to help you. We're going to teach you, and we're going to educate you. And people are counting on you, and we need heroes. And just, as a way, I don't even know how they recruit now, because things have been made so hard for officers right now. It's a very difficult. I can't imagine trying to recruit officers and tell them all the wonderful things that will happen as an officer, because they do just get criticized, and their lives are in danger every day. I would just stress that help is available if they're willing to get it, that there are going to be difficult things, but it takes a special person to go out there and do that anyway, and run towards the danger rather than away from it. And that, some people are cut out for that, and some people do great at it, and we need those people.
Great. Thanks, Amy. So those are all the questions we're going to have time for today. Again, we will try to follow up with those of you who sent us some specific questions afterward. And I'd like to thank Amy again for sharing her expertise today, and I'd like to thank all of you for attending. I hope you found it helpful. So at the close of today's webinar, here in just a bit actually, you're going to receive a brief survey regarding today's content. Please take a moment to fill it out. We'd really appreciate getting your feedback, and we'd also like to hear from you as to what topics you'd like us to cover in the future. So that's it for today. Thanks again for coming, and please join us again in the future for additional sessions of the Public Safety Innovation Series. Have a great afternoon, everyone.